Hi, and welcome to Season 5 of Across the Desk. Well, we've made it this far, and here we go, getting to about 2,000 or so views a month, 150 subscribers. Could use some more subscribers and more views, but we're growing. It's a growing thing, and we're doing just that. So thank you, everybody, and we're back to do it for another season. And this season, Season 5, is not unlike any other odd number season, where we go over crazy bills conservatives in our state legislature here in Oklahoma are shoving through, and we'll see what happens. But really, and that's usually what I do, because Nathan Dahm has a slew of them, and we'll probably do some shows on that. But really, what I want to concentrate on is something that happened this week with all of our Congress people when it came to acknowledging what happened on January 6th, 2021. So something happened last week. We had an anniversary of types, and not a great one, where we had an anniversary where hundreds, not a couple of thousand, Trump supporters stormed the Capitol building to try to stop a vote count in the Congress itself. Yeah, that's what they tried to do. This actually meets the definition of sedition. It really does in Code 18. It really does. It's sedition is what they did. Well, when it came down to recognizing this, having a moment of silence for it, because it really was a somber day and it should be recognized. We can't just forget about it. It's something we can't forget about, or it'll happen again. That's why they want you to forget about it. So we can't do that. So what did they do? What did all 7 of our Congress people do in the U.S. Congress? Well, they don't show up. Not only do they not show up, when asked by publications like the Tulsa World and CBS, their thoughts on it, no one responded. No one responded, and so there were 2 editorials put out. Tulsa World did one, where, wow, these guys are not saying a thing, like nothing ever happened or it's no big deal. It's kind of wild, because this was a big deal. And then the next day, I guess something happened. And being naive and not too bright, I guess, on political strategy and all that stuff, Stephanie Bice puts out a statement. And in this statement, it just fell flat. It didn't just fall flat, it was shocking in a ton of ways. Because here she is, she comes out saying how horrible this is, that this happened, and we shouldn't let this happen again. But then she wants to go on a victim blaming spree. And not only that, the worst part about it is the sympathy she has for these seditionists. She has sympathy for them. I have sympathy for these people that stormed the Capitol that day, because they had real questions about the vote and the count and everything else. Well, you know what? I sure hope she doesn't, now that there's been so many audits and everything else, and Republicans have come out and even said, to the detriment of themselves, because when they do come out and say, hey man, there was no stolen election, they immediately want to label them a rhino and tell them that, and brush them off like they don't mean anything. That's a crazy grandpa, uncle, whatever. That's what they do. So I get it. She wants to play the base, say, hey, I understand you had real questions. Because let's face it, this is Oklahoma, right? And they just gerrymandered District 5 map to add 11% more Republicans. So now she feels very comfortable going even deeper to the right. Even more outlandish stuff by saying how she sympathizes with criminals. That's what she said. And to sympathize with those criminals and to say nothing about the law enforcement that was hurt or killed that day. Nothing about that. Just, this was a horrible event, and we should remember so it doesn't happen again. But, I sympathize with the people that did the violence and the looting and the vandalism and the plain out sedition behavior to try to stop a vote count in the halls of Congress. And that's exactly what they did. And this is exactly what Stephanie Bice sympathizes with. She sympathizes with that. She has real questions about how Democrats can win an election. She really does. Because I don't know, maybe she thinks Republicans should have rigged it already. I don't know. they sure do try really hard here, with especially the maps that they have, where they carve out districts the way they do, and just the kind of the bloodthirsty sport that they make it out to be. And that's exactly where we are with this. So you have Stephanie Bice put out this statement, and I'm almost positive the other Congress people were like, oh my God, no, Stephanie, no, you're going to get beat up. There's no good way to angle this. And they're kind of right. Republicans are. There's no win in this for them. So just shut up about it. Don't say anything. Yeah, I mean that's political strategy. That's a great strategy that they have. It's a strategy that they keep. It's a strategy that they've played before. Hey man, that doesn't work for us. We're not going to get anything out of it. Just shut up. So and that's what they've done for the most part. They shut up because you hear nothing from Mullins about it. He tried to put out a small little statement, but it was an answer, non-answer. He answered the question by not answering it, like, oh man, that's not me, that's Justice Department, I'm focused on my job, my job isn't to worry about this or do that, make a spectacle. So that's why none of them showed up that day. They didn't show up because it was a big partisan event to them. That's what it was to them. They don't want to come together with Democrats at all, ever. And then they want to blame Democrats for not wanting to, play kumbaya and come together and be bipartisan on stuff. And I heard that a lot. I hear that about heard that just this week when they talked about getting rid of the filibuster. Republicans had a conference, had a little news meeting, and they told the people that it's these Democrats don't want to play with us. They don't want to play with us. And we're so sad about it. They're not being bipartisan. And you look at it like, wow, this same guy from Wisconsin or Michigan, the same guy who, rails against Democrats all day long and how we should pretty much hang Nancy Pelosi and everything else, thinks we should play nice with them. That's what these people think. And it goes into a bigger kind of issue with conservatism, especially today. They like to dish things, but they don't take it well. And especially when the same rules are applied to them. They just don't. And you see this especially with that. Now, getting back to this January 6th thing, this is kind of an important deal. Because there's certain things that happen. Like why they didn't say anything just after the first year anniversary. I'll tell you one thing. We're going to pivot from Stephanie Bice, who said the horrible thing she did, sympathizing with criminals, and saying how she sympathizes. Actually, that's actually what she used, right? Yeah, I sympathize with these folks. But even worse than that, and we don't hear it because he's playing politics here and not saying anything, being strategy-wise. And that's James Lankford. And we know why he's not saying anything. Because he's complicit. The guy is totally complicit. He is the seditionist that Stephanie Bice is sympathizing with. Come on, man. The guy put out an email on the 7th, and I've had shows about this. It's actually one of the top viewed shows of last season was the one I did on James Lankford, where he was being a traitor with his friends who said, James, just forget the law and the Constitution and find a way to keep Trump president. And that is a direct quote right out of his email. Yes, direct quote from his friends. Yes, go look it up. Email he sent out to constituents January 7th, 2021. He confesses that his friends were telling him to do this, and you know what James did? Went to the podium and tried to do exactly that. He is a seditionist. He should be serving up to 20 years in prison, if you ask me. It's exactly what James Lankford should be doing right now for trying to jettison our republic. So he's the seditionist that Stephanie Bice sympathizes with. And that's exactly why James Lankford was really quiet come January 6th, 2022. Because he's complicit. See, he wants this to all go away. He's out there so much you can't stand it. I mean, he's on everything. He's on every blog. He's on every vlog. He's on every news show, Newsmax. Well, if it's a crazy right-wing news show, he's on it. And he's on it every day, 2 to 3 to 5 times a day for a few different reasons. One, he's complicit as a seditionist. So he wants to try to find some credibility and gain that back, or at least try to flip the script, which is what he's been trying to do with this filibuster thing. They're trying to kill our republic. No, it's not what that's about. It isn't. And he just goes on and lies about it too. But that's a whole other story. Because we want to get back to James Lankford being a traitor and a seditionist. Because that's what he is. And it's important. Hey, it's important to get that out there. I want more people to say it. I want more people to go read that email he put out on the 7th. I want you to read it. Go read it and tell me after you read that that's not a confession letter. That's not a letter that he confessed that his friends and himself plotted to overthrow the government of the United States. That's what he did. Tried to get rid of it because they didn't vote for the guy he wanted in there. That's what that's about. And that's how James thinks. He thinks that he's righteous. I'm the righteous one, because they really do believe. James really does believe that God has ordained conservatives to control the destiny of the United States by any means necessary. And if that means getting rid of the Republic and the Constitution, well then James is absolutely okay with that. Because you see, conservatives are ordained. They've been chosen by God to lead the USA. Anything else is just evil. See how that works? Just like that. And that's James Lankford for you. So here he is, a traitor to our country, trying to claw back any kind of relevance, any kind of power he can, because that's another thing. See, he's on all these shows and everything else because James is out of power. He doesn't have control in the Senate like he used to. His side doesn't control who's on Senate committees or anything else or the agenda. So he's out of power in a lot of ways. So the only power he can gain is to have his Java with James. That's pretty much it these days for James Lankford. Though he is an influential figure in the Senate among Republicans, mostly because they look up to traitors like him. They do. Now, they weren't happy that he wussed out and decided not to go through with casting out the votes once the violence started. They were happy with that. But they were happy with what he tried to do through Senate procedure to return votes, tens of millions of votes, back to 7 states that didn't vote for Trump, so Trump could win. That's exactly what James Lankford tried to do. And this is exactly the sympathy that Stephanie Bice has for people like James Lankford. See, we're just trying to win. That's all they were trying to do. We're just trying to win. But, the way they're trying to win is totally unconstitutional. It's against the law. Can't do that here. You can't just put in who you want if he didn't win the election. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. Even though they want it to be. That's how they want it to be. It is, because they know that they don't have the numbers. It came out. James Lankford. This was another thing that came out. They were talking about stuff that James Lankford and Lamer were saying. They were doing stuff on what he was saying online and everything else, and they polled a bunch of people across the United States what they thought about this. You know what they came up with? They came up with people like James Lankford, who isn't as far to the right as the Lamer, but pretty far to the right. But this is James Lankford, okay? And he gets lumped in with that because he's kind of evangelical and wants to, go all that route of everything else, big government conservatism and everything else, and they asked what they thought of it. And when the polling came down, it was only 14 to 17% of America agreed with James Lankford on anything. He's so radical as a conservative, so extreme on his views, that he only pertains to 14 to 17% of the total electorate of this nation. The total electorate of this nation, 14 to 17% is all that agree with James Lankford. And why does he win? I'll tell you, well, because Republicans is like a cult. I know this, just from family and friends who are Republicans. They'll vote for the Republican no matter what. They cannot vote for the Democrat. They can barely vote for the Rhino, so come on. They're not going to vote for Democrat. They're not going to do it. They probably won't even vote for the independent. They might vote for a libertarian, but they might. But I'll tell you what, they're like they stick with their own. You see them do it. They do it all the time, all the way down to the Senate. They're all on lock and key, a lockstep together. They all vote the same. They all vote with each other. They all vote the same way. Can't vote for a Democrat because I guarantee you, like Joy Hoffmeister, it doesn't matter what she runs for with governor. It doesn't matter if she ran for dog catcher. You won't find a Republican voting for her because she's a Democrat now, even though she was a Republican last year and even says her values haven't changed, which makes her still a conservative who's just registered as a Democrat. So there you have it. Our first show in season 5. Back at it after a 6-week hiatus. Coming at you for another 20 episodes. Right now, every Saturday morning, I'll put one out so you can stream it anytime you want. That's basically it. Our show this week, which I usually do crazy state bills, which I'll probably get on next week. But this week was so important to talk about what happened January 6th and the non-happening of what our U.S. Congress people and representatives did or didn't do to commemorate it. Well, this is Across the Desk with Kit Fairchild. We'll see you next week.